Hi, everyone. My name's Kayne. I'm the Worldwide Professional Services Director for Centrify Corporation, and you're joining us today on Centrify Insider. So if you have a question during the course of today's show, please do use the Q&A app and just go ahead and type in your question, and we will take it live on air. And I wanted to kind of frame up today's show by first of all introducing our guests. We've got Robertson Pimentel, and we have Cindy Ritchie also joining us. And I was reading an article in the newspaper this morning, the Bellingham Herald, and I'm going to share that with the audience really quickly here to kind of frame today's discussion. And let me just share my screen. Here we are. So this is an email scam from the Bellingham Herald about a scam that's going around to various businesses where it's tricking people into giving out their passwords. And it's kind of a standard thing. You know, people see a document that comes from what looks to be a client that they do business with, and when they open the attachment, they're told, hey, you have to type in your password in order to get that. And what the problem is, and I've highlighted the section here, is after the bad actors get access to the username and the password of the user, they can do all kinds of things, and they can do a lot of things that would normally be something we'd think of as a privileged operation. We could actually, if they have the same password across multiple websites, like their bank, for example, not only can they lock the user out of their email, but they can also change their bank credentials and do all kinds of other issues with a high degree of privilege. And this kind of highlights the problem associated with just having a single factor for user authentication. So, Robertson, we've been talking a little bit about this before today's broadcast. What do you think here? You know, is there a better way to approach this single-factor authentication limitation?
Absolutely, Kane. So I think I'm holding some of the potential things that people could be using, right? So
Okay.
we know the bad guys are also collecting passwords, so we need to have countermeasures that can mitigate this problem.
Okay, like what?
For example, having something that you have, maybe a smart card, maybe
Hmm.
a one-time key, maybe a YubiKey, or even your phone, something that you have, or something that you are, in addition to just something that you know, like a password.
Okay, because if it's something that you know, like if I was to know your password, I could impersonate you and do things on your behalf.
Absolutely.
That probably wouldn't be very good, would it? So you had an idea of laying out kind of what is multi-factor authentication. Do you have a picture of that you want to talk about?
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen, right? So and it's a basic principle of access control, right? So it's not only about authentication, is also about the whole process of access control. So the typical process starts like this: you identify yourself.
Hmm.
If you're in a corporation, or you may live in something like Active Directory or an LDAP directory, right? Or maybe an assertion is being made about you because you're using Federation. You may also have like a SaaS-based directory, or even a social media directory, right? So, but first you need to identify yourself, right? Then the next thing is to authenticate yourself, right? That's when you actually have to prove to that system who you are. And a factor could be, like you said, something you know, something you have, or even something you have, like maybe a biometric fingerprint. Once you're in the system, right, that's when challenges start, right? So organizations have challenges today because they have too many directories, probably, right? And that impedes the ability to do consolidated, strong authentication. But when you get to authorization, that's when things get a little, more complex, because you have multiple platforms like Unix, Linux, and Macs.
Hmm.
You may have applications and systems that live in the cloud, right, or on premise, and there's context to it, right? So you have the directory problem, the factors problem, and then the context. In OSs, you have privilege escalation and access. In an application like Concur, you may have, okay, I need to provide approvals for expense reports. Or in NetSuite, I need to be able to deal with a general ledger. So the context is where a lot of organizations have challenges. And then there's also the auditing, right? So for a lot of organizations, audits are logs. At Centrify, we also provide session capture and replay. So the whole process, identification, authentication, authorization, privilege management, and auditing is the whole process of access control.
Okay, and so in that scenario, then, if a bad guy is to steal a password or a bad actor is to steal a password, they can get one of the authentication factors, but only a single one of them. Then if we require an additional level of escalated privilege to access something, like you said, Concur, it could be based on something else.
Absolutely. So you have different contexts like maybe advanced things like geolocation, time of the day, maybe you're inside your organization or outside. Maybe there's a distance. You work in New York and then suddenly you're popping up in Florida. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that we can do today to actually mitigate that type of action.
Well, that's fantastic. And so you said that you'd been working on showing how that this could be demonstrated as well, because still it's a bit esoteric, right? So let's take a scenario here of, oh, I don't know. Let's think about this. An end user, maybe not an end user. Let's say an administrator. Could we do a scenario where
Absolutely.
an administrator wants to log on to a server which he or she hasn't logged on to fairly regularly, and handle that?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm going to walk you through three scenarios, right?
Okay.
One of those scenarios is going to be server access. The other one is going to be privilege elevation, and the other one is going to be checking out a password, right? So, for example, what I have right here is I have a bunch of systems, right? Windows systems, some Linux systems. Let's just illustrate one example: server access, for example.
Okay.
If my user today has the ability to probably, log in with Kerberos, right? So if the person is on premises
Mm-hmm.
and they are authenticated inside the premises, they don't even have to type a password to log in. But you can augment that capability by adding additional controls. For example, you can say, well, maybe my PCI system or my SOC system, I really want to ask you for a couple of things. I want you to focus on the phone on the right side. I'm using a
Okay.
user, Lisa, right? So Lisa Simpson wants to access the SOC system, right? She's going to type in her password, but notice that she's going to be challenged and say, "Hey, you need to give me something else, right? Something else could be, for example, um, you need to provide an OTP code. Perhaps you need to provide a phone call where I can call you back and things of that nature. Other scenarios could be, for example, maybe the person needs to log into a secure system, right? And they have something
Okay.
like smart card, right? So I can say, well, for you to be able to log in here, you need to provide a smart card. And notice that in here, if Lisa wants to log in here, let's just say Lisa wants to log into the system, what you see is, you're not authorized to log in from this machine because there's Centrify software that impedes that. But even
Mm-hmm.
if you want to access with a user that is authorized, you may need to put in a smart card and PIN. This is supported natively by Windows, but Centrify can add a little bit more things to this to make the experience a little bit cooler. So I don't know if this makes sense to you, but that's one of the scenarios that we can support.
Okay. And so in this instance, then the user had to provide. You typed in a smart card PIN
Exactly.
in
So
order to access the Windows system there.
absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things that I can do is I can actually using to augment that capability, I can use Simplify roles, and I can
Okay.
say, well, if you belong to that particular role and you want to access that system, you must have you cannot do it with a password. You must have SSL, for example. I have a mixed role here that I've created. If I go to properties here, what you see is that I'm actually denying this user the ability to log in with a
Mm-hmm.
password, right? So if she were to go directly to the system, let's just say I want to initiate the session using Putty again. Let
Uh-huh.
me just open Putty real quick here. If I wanted to go to that particular system as Maggie and not that way, the other way.
Not using Kerberos, right?
Yeah, see, I'm just too used to use Kerberos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to just go this way and say, well, Maggie, if she types in her password, she's going to say, hey, you cannot access at this time.
I see.
She must actually has to be in her station, right? Log in, and she must do something like Kerberos to get the authentication that she requires, right? Otherwise, that's not gonna give her what she needs to access that system.
And now, just to maybe I'm dating myself, but I think the previous ways that people would try to do this is you'd restrict network access and you'd build something like a VLAN, and you'd have this notion that they have to go to the jump box and the gateway box in order to do that. But you didn't do any network trickery there. You just said, regardless of where you're coming in from, you can't log in.
Yeah, and this is why layering control. So not to say that jump boxes are not a good idea, right? But when you're dealing with security, you're layering controls one on top of each other. Mm-hmm. Ideally, you will, proxy connections, but you can also control access end to end. And if it's a secure environment, you need to make sure that people can give you more. And with Centrify, we not only can do this with server access, but also with privilege elevation, right? I can have a particular command, and I can say, well, in order for you to be able to do this, you must provide multi-factor authentication, right? So that adds an additional layer of control in that particular context.
So what's that look like for the end user when they actually have to provide a second factor for authentication?
Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, I may have I don't know if I have an environment here. Let's take a look. Let's take a look with Lisa, right? Let's see. I think Lisa may not have any rights in here, but let's take a look in another system where she does have access to. So Lisa, I think she's a DBA in here. Take a look and see. So notice that she's being challenged for the multi-factor here just for access, right?
Okay.
And what you'll see is that on my right, I got
your phone.
A note saying, hey, do I approve, right? I can approve it. Mm-hmm. And once I approve it, notice that I'll be able to log in. But also I could use my mobile authenticator here, right, as well. Or I can be challenged with a phone call. For example, I think my user Maggie, I did something really cool with her.
Oh, hold on a second, Robertson. Before we go there, I want to point out something really cool that I just saw.
Yeah, sure.
You got prompted by the phone, and I remember back in the day that I had a device that I had to look up the number, and I had to type the number in on the screen, and inevitably it would change, and maybe if I didn't have like a 10 key on the side, I could never type it in on time. And you didn't have to do that. You just hit a button on your mobile.
Absolutely. So that's push MFA, and it's enabled by REST APIs. But believe it or not, there's sometimes that you need that asynchronous connectivity. Maybe you're on a plane, right?
Sure, yeah.
You don't necessarily can't have Wi-Fi on. You still have the ability to get an OTP code to do that. As a matter of fact, you can carry your codes maybe on your YubiKey, or you can even use the Centrify app to do so. You can have, so you can see here, I have my Amazon root account and any other codes as well. So it's quite quite useful, right? Having kind of like an OTP wallet on your
just on your mobile. And I know people like myself. If I can get out of the house without my wallet, but if I get out of the house without my mobile phone, I freak out. I have to go home and go pick it up.
Absolutely. So that's what we want to. We want to make sure that we provide that level of flexibility and usability at the same time, right?
Sure.
So another context could be privilege elevation, right? So this may be huge now because we wanted to make sure that people read it. But for example, we provide this privilege elevation tool for Unix. It's called EasyDo, right? So if I do this command, it's going to show me what commands I can run, right? So I can do also, because it's based on sudo, and my typing is horrible, I can do like EasyDo -L, and it's going to ask me for the ability to see that. But I have a command. It's called AD-flush. And typically, you can only run it by root, right? So one of the things that I've done is I've required this user, for them to do AD-flush, they need to provide multi-factor. So I'm going to do an AD-flush. And notice one of the things that is going to come up as an option is the ability to get a phone call. So I can have a phone call come in, and it's going to ring here on my phone, hopefully, and I can, I'm going to put it in speaker.
Okay.
Hello, this is Centrify. Please complete your authentication by pressing the pound or hash key.
I'm going to press the pound.
You've successfully authenticated using Centrify.
And you can see that the the output of the command was done specifically. So phone factor is also very, very popular as well. And the key here is to provide flexibility. Those factors can be disabled or enabled as well.
Wow, that's really powerful. And just going back to the news story we opened with today, then in those cases where the bad guy was to get somebody's password through a successful phishing attempt or a spear phishing attempt, the end user would get a notification on their mobile, hey, I see you're trying to do something. You're logging in on a system like you said, Concur, NetSuite, or Unix or Windows host with additional privileges, and they'd go, I'm not doing that, am I? I didn't.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure. And Cindy's going to have some cool stuff that she's going to show in that context.
Okay,
right?
Cool.
Yeah, the final scenario that I wanted to show you is Windows, right? So we also want to make sure that we provide privilege elevation on Windows.
Okay.
One of the cool things is that with Centrify, you can also group systems that are Windows systems in Centrify zones, right? You can have those systems participate and provide privilege elevation. For example, my user Lisa, notice that she had to authenticate with a smart card.
Mm-hmm.
If she wants to run an application that typically requires local administrator like disk management, she's going to get this message. Hey, you're not a local administrator, right? With Centrify, we can either right-click, run with privilege, and notice what's going to happen. She's going to be prompted, but she authenticated securely. So if she wants to use her password, I know her password, so Maggie. She wants to log in, she's going to get, hey, you can't do that because you're authenticated security. So we can basically force the user, and actually Bank of America is not supposed to be in there, the user to basically type in her smart card credential. And guess what? She's going to be able to launch that application, only that application in the context of a local administrator, right? And that's going to eliminate a lot of advanced threats like pass the hash. So remember, you grant access to applications, or you can do also a privileged desktop as well, and that gives you a lot of flexibility and strong authentication as well. Okay. And those are the use cases I wanted to go through. Secure accessing servers, right? Privilege elevation on Unix, Linux, privilege accessing servers on Windows, and privilege elevation on Windows as well.
Awesome. Well, Robertson, thank you for all of that. Just as a reminder to our viewers before we switch over to Cindy, who will also be talking to us today, I wanted to remind you, if you have a question or if you've got a comment, please use the Q&A app. That's if you've not used Google Hangouts before. You just have to kind of wiggle your mouse in the middle of the screen, and you'll get a pop-up that has a little Q&A icon. Click that. Go ahead, type in your questions. We'd love to get your questions, and we'll take those live on the air. And with that, Cindy, everything Robertson just showed us was based on primarily on-premise systems, traditional Unix, traditional Windows, Linux systems. You've been working with this same problem space on mobile and on SaaS, right?
Yes, yeah. That's actually been probably one of the most common questions that are asked, when we're starting to deploy clients with their mobile SaaS environment, with their cloud environment, is how can we also, put in this strong authentication, multi-factor authentication. And it's pretty simple. It's basically, it builds on a lot of things that, Robertson has already talked about as far as, you want to challenge who the person is first before maybe, offering them the chance to type in their password in their environment. And this kind of just, creates a little bit more security, making sure that, the person who's logging into your environment truly is that one person. A couple of the other things that you can also do is very, very similar in the cloud environment as within the on-prem environment that Robertson just showed, is you can also really restrict things down to a corporate IP range. So maybe if the people are logged into the environment on the corporate IP range, maybe they don't have to multi-factor, but once they leave corporate, the trusted environment, then they would have to multi-factor. And you can also restrict this down to the applications that users are using within the cloud environment too.
So you could say something like NetSuite, which allows access to the company financials, requires a multiple factor authentication, whereas, I don't know, maybe your email
Facebook
doesn't.
Or something like that.
Well, maybe Facebook maybe. It depends if you're the corporate marketing officer or the person who's updating Facebook that day, right?
Right. Yeah, so I do have a quick demo to show.
Sure.
Let me go ahead and share my screen out.
Okay.
All right, so this is our cloud environment over here. And you can see that I've kind of already gone to where the authentication profiles are. I've set up one for the strong authentication to just show what it is. The strong authentication profile, or the authentication profiles, is basically allowing the system administrator to define how their users are going to be challenged. You can see that we have a lot of the same options that Robertson also talked about: password, mobile authenticator, phone call, text message, email, user-defined security questions, and OTP client tokens, or OTP client. So in this scenario, what I've done is I've allowed the text message, and then also it's going to be the user's going to be challenged for their password. I have all of these set up through different policies, and the policies you can set up different ones.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, I have one that is specific for strong authentication. We can see that within our login authentication. Let me resize my screen real quick. Sorry.
There we go.
There we go. You can see that we are going to be doing the strong authentication profile, which is the profile I just showed you,
Mm-hmm.
if the identity cookie is not present. So if we want to take a look and see how that works, resize real quick.
And thank you for boosting the fonts. That's helpful.
Sure.
I imagine somebody out there is watching this on their iPad and somebody else is watching this on their iPhone going, wow, what does that say? So the big fonts definitely help.
But when we have a standard user that's just logging into the environment, you can see that they're first going to be prompted to provide a code that's sent to them via text message. And if we look, we can see that I have now received a code to log in.
Oh, okay.
I could just click the link, or I could actually type in the code itself.
So you could just click that link. You don't actually have to type that in.
Exactly.
Oh, there we are.
And so now it's going to prompt me for my password. And this is actually just a cloud user, but this also works if this is an Active Directory user.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we've been challenged 2 times. First, we've had to prove, yes, this is our actual device. We've been sent a code to it. We typed in the code, and then we have to type in our password. In this case, we're into our cloud portal. You can see I only have 2 very simple applications set up right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the star over here next to the cloud user, it means that I'm pretty much authenticated all the way through. So that I've been verified. This is who I am cloud user.
Okay.
So now let's go ahead and let's log out real quick. And let's take a look at my other authentication profile that I have set up. Over here, I have one set up just for Twitter multi-factor authentication. This is basically just going to allow specific apps to be challenged. In the example that you used, you can challenge someone if they're going to launch NetSuite or any other sort of sensitive type app or application that holds sensitive client corporate information.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to just use Twitter as my very simple example.
Oh, you can certainly send out a lot of sensitive information via Twitter.
You really can, yes.
Yeah.
So in this case, I have a couple different options that are challenged, and that is we're going to get the email code confirmation, and then we'll also be challenged via the password.
Okay.
So let's see that in place. I've attached this to the exact same policy that I had, and that is my MFA authentication. My login authentication, and then you can see that really what I'm only doing is I'm applying the login policy to just specific applications.
Okay.
So let me open up a new incognito window.
So in this case, if the end user just logs in, they don't need anything special. But if they want to use Twitter that day, if it's their turn to update Twitter, they need to provide additional authentication.
Right. Oh, darn it. I think I just messed up my example. Sorry.
It's okay, we've got a minute. This is live after all. And for those of you who are watching from home or from perhaps a coffee shop, please do send us your questions. This is meant to be interactive. So just go ahead, type in the questions in the Q&A app, and we'll take them live on the air.
All right, so you can see that
there's a key there.
I've logged into Cloud User.
Uh-huh.
And in this case, Twitter has this little key that's been attached to it. Once I go ahead and log, this key means that there is some sort of multi-factor authentication attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I launch the application, it's going to send me an email application.
Okay.
In this case, I should receive an email.
Mm-hmm.
And that's email time for you right there. I sent it to you.
Yep, right here.
Okay, so it's actually sending it over to Cindy.
Yep, so you can see that I've received my email.
Okay.
Press continue with authentication,
Mm-hmm.
and almost instantaneously, I've been authenticated through. Now, I don't have my correct password attached to the application. However, if my password was correct on my Cindy Centrify account, then I would have been logged all the way through into Twitter, and then I can start tweeting and reading my newsfeed at that time.
Okay.
And I think that is about it. I think we're almost out of time, too.
Yeah. Also, I can actually remember one of the ones that we didn't cover was something you are. I can show you a really cool one.
Sure.
In the 1 minute we have.
We've got a couple minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So another one that you can use is, for example, at Centrify we also have a password and session manager, right? And the focus here is going to be on my phone. So one of the additional authentication factors that we propose is something you are, right?
Okay.
So one of the things that we can do is we can, maybe a resource, maybe a server broke, right? And you need to actually fix it.
Sure.
One of the very advantageous capabilities that we provide is that because I'm mobile first, if I need to check out, for example, a password of a local admin account on a system.
Now, do you want to share your screen for your phone on screen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I can actually go and browse my servers, right? And this is the Centrify app, right? I can look at my resources, right? I can browse for the systems I need, and then I found that system that just broke, right? And I need to check out that password, right? Notice that the other factor that we talked about, something you are. I can put my
so it's actually got biometric just built in through the mobile.
Exactly. So this is using the iOS API, the fingerprint. And notice that I have several options. I have the ability to, extend the time for that password and check it in. And once it's checked in, it's going to be rotated automatically. So the key here is, the challenge for organizations continues to be to add context to multi-factor. We know that we have mastered the multi-factor when VPNing in and some other things, but at Centrify, our MFA everywhere strategy is about giving context, server escalation, privilege elevation, application context, password checkout, sessions. So there's many other areas that we need to make sure that we provide strong authentication and working really hard to fill those gaps as well.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that demo. That was really cool, Robertson. And also, I see you just put your password on screen, but what's good is it's protected, right, through multiple factors.
Absolutely, and it's actually being rotated already, so, I mean...
Perfect. Okay, so that's less of a concern. Here I was thinking, we were talking about how easy it was for bad guys to get the password. Let's put it on a YouTube broadcast.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. We rotate it automatically, we check it in. And again, but it's all about layering those security controls.
Okay. Well, we'll take a second. If anybody on the viewers has got any other questions or comments, again, that's just the Q&A app. Go ahead, type those in. Cindy, Robertson, any closing thoughts about layering on this security for organizations?
Cindy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that organizations are starting to really explore more in depth. I don't think that a lot of them really made a priority of it, a few years ago. But as we become a more, mobile environment with more remote workers and people just on the go and not necessarily working in traditional workspaces, that it's definitely become a lot more important for them to look at this type of multi-factor authentication. Just for the fact that, you can have so many different ways of logging in and obtaining the information that you need from just so many different pieces of technology, just different types of equipment. That I think is really, needs to be on the forefront of most companies' security policies.
Fantastic. And Robertson, you speak to a lot of our clientele daily. What are you hearing?
Well, my advice is this: it's all about layering security controls, right? So you believe it or not, you have to cover the basics. If you still have multiple directories, if you still don't understand the least privilege model, if you think in terms of passwords, you're going to have a lot of challenges. And always look at a vendor that can actually give you not only a driver for multi-factor, but also context-based, right? So access, privilege elevation, applications, context within applications. That's going to be important down the road. And check us out at Centrify.com.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I want to. I'm going to There we are. I want to thank everybody for watching today. If you've got additional questions or if you've got additional comments, you can check us out, like Robertson said, Centrify.com. And this is Centrify Insider. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And with that, we will shut down the broadcast. Thank you.